The Father and the Broken Chair. In a small town by the river, there lived an old man named Henry. He was kind, quiet, and loved his family more than anything. Henry had one son, Mark, who was married and had a little boy named Ben. Henry had worked as a carpenter all his life. His hands were strong but rough from years of cutting wood and building furniture. He could make tables, shelves, and chairs that lasted for many years. In the middle of the living room stood a simple wooden chair that Henry had built when Mark was a small boy. It wasn't beautiful or perfect, but it was full of memories. Mark used to sit on that chair while Henry told him stories. Later, when Mark grew up, Henry would sit in that same chair every evening, smiling as he watched his family eat dinner. Time passed, and Henry became old. His hair turned white, and his back bent a little. His hands began to shake, and his legs were not as strong as before. He couldn't work much anymore, but he still tried to help around the house. At first, Mark and his wife Linda were kind to him. They helped him eat and took him to the park on sunny days. But as time went by, Henry became slower. He sometimes forgot things or dropped his cup during meals. Linda started to sigh and complain. "Your father is making a mess again," she said one evening. "Maybe he should sit somewhere else." Mark didn't answer. He looked at his father, who was sitting quietly on the old wooden chair, trying not to cause any trouble. The chair creaked softly under his weight. A few days later, while Henry was eating soup, his hand shook and the bowl fell to the floor. The soup spilled everywhere. Linda jumped up in anger. "Oh no! Look what he's done again!" Henry tried to stand up to clean it, but the old chair broke a little. One leg cracked and it wobbled badly. Linda frowned. "That chair is too old. It should be thrown away," she said. Henry looked at the chair sadly. His eyes were full of pain, not because of the chair, but because it was one of the last things he had built with his own hands. "It's all right," he said softly. "I can fix it." But Mark said nothing. He just sighed. That night, Henry sat alone in his small room. He touched the broken chair gently. The wood felt cold. He remembered how Mark used to sit on it as a boy, swinging his small legs and laughing. Tears filled his eyes. "Maybe it's time for me to rest too," he whispered. He stayed up late, slowly sanding and repairing the broken parts. He wanted to make it strong again, not for himself, but for his son. Outside, the moonlight fell through the window, shining softly on the old man's hands as he worked. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the little town. Birds sang outside, but inside the house, everything was quiet. Mark walked to his father's room to check on him. The door was open. He saw Henry sitting in the broken chair holding a small piece of sandpaper. The chair looked old but clean. Henry had tried to fix it during the night. "Father," Mark said softly, "you didn't sleep?" Henry smiled weakly. "I wanted to make it strong again," he said. "You and Ben can use it after me." Mark looked at the chair. One leg was still cracked, and Henry's hands were covered with tiny cuts. The sight made his chest feel heavy, but he didn't know what to say. That day, Henry ate breakfast quietly and went back to his room to rest. He seemed tired, weaker than usual. In the afternoon, little Ben ran into the room and shouted, "Grandpa! Grandpa, come play!" Henry smiled. "All right, my little one, but I can't run anymore. Let's play sitting here." Ben climbed onto his lap. The chair creaked softly, but it held them both. Henry laughed a little and told him an old story, the same one he used to tell Mark when he was small. Ben listened with big eyes and asked, "Grandpa, did you make this chair?" Henry nodded slowly. "Yes, my boy, I made it for your father when he was your age." Ben smiled. "It's my favorite chair now." Henry kissed his grandson's head. "I'm happy to hear that." That evening, after dinner, Henry went to his room early. Mark looked at him for a long time as he walked away. Something in his heart felt strange, a quiet sadness he couldn't name. The next morning, the house was silent again. Linda called for breakfast, but Henry didn't come out. Mark went to his room and found his father sitting peacefully in the chair, his hands resting on his lap, his eyes closed. He wasn't breathing. The old man was gone. Mark's heart broke. He fell to his knees and held his father's hands. They were cold, but still and calm, as if he had simply fallen asleep while fixing the chair he loved. That day, the house was full of tears. Even Linda cried. Little Ben asked, "Daddy, why isn't Grandpa waking up?" Mark hugged his son tightly and whispered, "He's sleeping, Ben. He's going to rest now." After the funeral, Mark sat alone in his father's room. He looked at the chair, the same one Henry had repaired on his last night. The sunlight came through the window and shone on the smooth wood. Mark touched the chair gently. He remembered his childhood, the stories, the laughter, and the love his father had given him. "I didn't understand before," he whispered. "All he wanted was to stay close to us." Tears ran down his face. He decided not to throw the chair away. Instead, he placed it in the living room, the same place it had always been. From that day on, whenever Mark felt lonely or tired, he sat in the chair. It was old and a little broken, but it reminded him of his father's warm hands and kind heart. Sometimes, little Ben climbed onto his lap and said, "Daddy, tell me a story, like Grandpa used to." And Mark would smile through his tears and begin to tell one. The broken chair became a symbol, not of weakness, but of love that never fades, even after someone is gone. Moral of the story: parents give us everything: time, love, and care. One day, when they grow old, give that love back before it's too late.